August 2024 Over the Road magazine article. Learn first, then do. Many operators believe their accountant is the best. They've been told their accountant gets all the latest CRA updates before anyone else and knows everything about lowering taxes. The confidence they show towards their accountant is actually very impressive. However, how much of that confidence is based on fact and how much on ignorance? Please don't take that word personally. Being an independent operator in Canada is a special career field. Hauling 80,000 pounds across our country is no small task. It requires skills and training like very few careers do. Safety in winter and navigation in hazardous conditions are the norm in the life of an independent operator. The industry is truly a profession in society. However, there are very few avenues where a clear path of upward mobility is normalized. A driver can only drive one truck at a time. 80% of the skills can be acquired within a 2-year period. I'm not implying there isn't continual learning, but a person can very easily plateau and not advance in their career. Due to the general impression a truck driver tends to only minimally advance in their career, the occupation has often been considered a dead-end job. There are lifers who only want to drive, and those who look to get off the road to advance in another career. I've been in the independent operator industry for 30 years and have met thousands of operators and drivers. Many of these meetings have been face-to-face across my desk. Though I acknowledge that there are probably individuals who have met more drivers than I, my sampling is significant enough to warrant appreciation. There are too many operators who play at their business. They enter the business without research or mentoring, and their continuation in the industry is without adequate guidance. It's a little like operators learn through experience only, rather than seeking advice and perspectives. Gaining understanding of your craft is critical to success in any venture, trucking or non-trucking. Making a good choice is not a matter of experience as much as it is a matter of proper preparation for success. I'm of the belief that almost anyone can be a successful lease owner-operator provided they want to learn the habits to success. There are very few individuals who hold a commercial driver's license who cannot also be a successful operator. A successful driver operates a highway tractor for a boss who generally makes money on their labor. Moving to a lease owner-operator is only changing control of certain choices and managing cash flow. If the successful operator doesn't change any of their behavior at all, the financial success is transferred to the operator rather than the other boss. Though there may be individuals who disagree with the basic concept, I stand on this belief because of my experience. Learning is almost always a matter of setting aside pride rather than a matter of intellectual capacity. Expressing the words, "I'm not a numbers guy," in response to learning proper cash flow is a reflection of pride. I don't have to learn. It's a very subtle and often overlooked form of pride, but it is a matter nonetheless. People who humble themselves to learn will almost always succeed. Those who make excuses for not applying themselves is a reflection of pride or simple laziness. It's much better to just say the truth, "I don't want to learn," and then not be an operator than think you can survive without learning just because you give yourself an excuse. That type of behavior is playing at your business, not being successful almost deliberately or deceptively. I find intellectuals usually to be the most self-deceptive. Many years ago, I was told the story of a successful driver who, after 2 years, was called into the payroll office and asked about a series of uncashed payroll checks of nearly 6 months. The rather simple-minded driver had a habit of only cashing payroll checks when he actually needed it, rather than when he got them. 6 months of checks over a 2-year period means he saved 25% of his earnings, a very impressive amount. This driver though very simple-minded, was a financial success because of his actions, not his intelligence. Proper money management is a simple concept. More money in, flowing, than out. A concept too many people do not wish to learn. Too often I've seen new operators on one day say, "I'm not a numbers guy," and then the next day roll into the parking lot with a new F-150. Obviously, at some point he thought he knew enough about numbers to buy a new half-ton. He was too smart for his money. He would have been far better off living a simple-minded life. Don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not perfect at managing my own money sometimes. I think too much, deceive myself willingly, but I have a healthy fear of my overconfidence and usually return quickly to a simple life or simple-minded behavior. Most people do it occasionally, but living within their means is usually living a humble life, forgiving yourself and quickly abandoning hubris. There's been a lot of talk about MELT lately, mandatory entry-level training. I would rather see MLLT, mandatory lifelong training. Though I admit the mandatory would be hard to enforce on some people, not because they don't have the brains, but because they don't have the humility. I pray that never be an accusation directed at me. Simply put, though, if you don't understand something, you probably shouldn't do it. You should increase your learning and habits first. You should probably keep asking questions until you do understand it. And do it. Learning how to be a good driver is difficult, but if you can learn that, you have plenty enough brains to be a successful operator. Remember, it's not a matter of brains, it's a matter of humility and appropriate actions. Learn to do the right things, and you will be successful. Well, that was my article, August of 2024, and I like that quite a bit. That's one of my favorite stories, the story of that rather simple truck driver who didn't really know what he was doing with his paycheck, but he saved up 25% over 2 years. Some other things about that driver, for instance, the company often asked him to take a shower once or twice more per week, that kind of thing. And oftentimes we judge people completely from the wrong perspective. We can take a look at some people and we look at them, boy, they're filthy, boy, they're this, boy, they're, and they don't hold much class, but it's their actions that actually put them on a trajectory of success. So they are, that was a good 30 years ago that story happened. I mean, they still had manual checks back then. It wasn't direct deposit even. So that story had many years. If he never changed his habits, he actually would be right now a multimillionaire very easily, because what the payroll department did for him was they started him up in a direct deposit system, so he was right on the edge of being direct deposited, and then they had automatic transfers into, I think, mutual funds or RSPs or whatever it was. So if he was still driving 30 years later, that man is a very, very rich man. And if you would meet him on the street, you might think he's homeless or a vagrant or something like that. Very, very wealthy. Good, solid money management is not an intellectual achievement. It is a disciplined achievement. And there's a concept that I've found in business, and I have started out with absolutely nothing, did very well, and then I was less than nothing, and now I'm doing quite well again, and I'm very thankful for that. But so I've experienced very high and very low points financially in my life. And in the end, it always comes down to discipline, and not 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 lying to yourself about things. I was extremely naive when I first got into business 30 years ago, and that naivete cost me a great deal of money. I just assumed everybody wanted to be financially successful, and I trusted people because of my assumption. I trusted people too much, and it got me into a 14-year battle to get my head above water again. And I consciously made the decision personally that I still do want to trust people, but the impact that it has on me financially, I can trust people, but not expose myself to loss from individuals who don't follow through with their word. I had a situation. It seems like every 8 to 10 years, which actually is a long space between different events. But I've had employees, for instance, lie, steal, and do a number of extremely very nasty things, shocking things. Some things that I actually still to this day I can't quite understand how an individual would even motivate themselves to do something malicious of that nature. Maybe I'm very, very naive about some people's personal bitterness, but I just lately had a situation where somebody, I guess you could say, stole from me. I generally, at this point in time in my career, and whatever, I'm 61. I don't. I'm diversified enough. I'm spread out enough that I actually don't. I'm not exposed to any one individual enough to wipe me out. So I'm okay that way. But occasionally I do get burnt. And just shortly, a little while ago, I got burnt by an individual, and having experienced it over a good 30 years now, so I've had a good 5 or 6 individuals who were extremely, very unethical, corrupt. I've seen where they end up, where the crooks end up 10, 20, even 30 years later, and they go through a roller coaster in their life. They seem to financially do good, and then they just crash, and then they do good and they good. Up and down, up and down. So after 30 years, they've worked incredibly hard and got very, very little ahead, and oftentimes no further ahead. And that's a little bit sad. Maybe I'm very goal oriented, and I want to have a respectable retirement, and I don't want to eat dog food when I retire, kind of a thing. So I try and squirrel away savings and resources and the like. But honestly, I see them, they put 30, 40 years of work in their life, and they got absolutely nowhere. And realistically, they are harvesting what they sowed in their life. And there was one carrier number of years ago that was unbelievably crooked in a particular city. I don't want to say too much about what it is, because there's a spin-off that's still around. But that company for 35 years screwed everybody all around them, operators, drivers, whatever. But for whatever reason, I guess they always made their payments. The individual was, the owner of that company was almost 70 years of age, and he was trying to sell the company. And we found out, everybody found out that they maxed out the mortgage on their on their building that they had for a good 20 or 25 years or whatever. So they were cashing out on everything, and they were looking to sell the business to another entity. And it was delayed for a couple of days. Canada Revenue Agency jumped in and started tearing everything apart. The individual shredded documents over a whole weekend. I know that I talked to the accountant who worked there, and then because there was no documents, they just negotiated a settlement with Canada Revenue Agency based on whatever asset value the individual had. Well, the guy had worked for 35 years, many hours, long, sacrificed in a whole bunch of things, and ended up with absolutely nothing. And so he was almost 70 years of age and lost everything. That's a horrible way to end a life. He better have had a whole lot of fun getting there, because by the time it was time for him to retire, he couldn't enjoy himself. He still had to work for his bread and peanut butter, kind of a thing. It was a story that really opened up my mind. That say, man, you can climb a hill and make it look, by everybody else's standards, that you're doing really well, but nobody knows what the finances are behind. Nobody knows how much debt you have, and you could fall flat on your face in a 2-week period, and you're gone. And everything that you've worked, 5 years, 2 years, 20 years, in this case 35 years, and everything is gone. That is something we have to consider in what we're building with our businesses, in our work. If you're an independent operator and you're looking, okay, well, I got one truck now, I want 5 by this and 10 by that, and I get my own running rights and do this and do that, how are you going to get there? If you can do it ethically, well, then you may be able to actually build solid equity in what you're doing. If you are crooked, I don't know any exception to, I don't know any successful crooks. Maybe it skews my data a little bit, but being dishonest is really the fulcrum, the turning point where it'll lead you to failure rather than success. So it's a big feature for me, and if you're crooked, one of the biggest things about crooks are generally they tend to be filled with pride. They think they know what they're doing better than anyone else, and they make a whole bunch of assumptions in their mind, and then when it actually works out on the highway, out in the road, out in real life, in their bank account, they realize those assumptions are just that, they're assumptions. It's not tied to any kind of reality. So it's I'm a big believer in being humble. The only thing is, if I honestly take a look at my life, there are areas in which I don't listen, and you can if you ask my wife, that she can verify that. But realistically, the older I get, I really want to be more humble, because I realize I'm much more vulnerable than what I sometimes assume. Like a lot of people have heard me talk about, I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, and debt-free living, and I've been debt-free for many years, and realistically, I don't plan on being in debt at all. The only times I ever get into debt is if I have a very large transaction, and like for instance, I want to do an investment, and so I have a piece of rental property, for instance, and I want to take 6 months to sell the rental property, but I want to start the investment immediately. So I'll get a sort of, I guess, a mortgage on the house until such a time as it sells. Once it sells, then I pay out the other debt, and I'm debt free. There are times I don't know, you call that bridge financing or whatever. But net wise, I don't ever never upside down. It's very very temporary if I do debt. So I'm not 100% Dave Ramsey, but probably about 98% supporter of his principles or so. But that being said, even if I do have a debt-free life, I'm still vulnerable. I'm still vulnerable to the market. I'm still vulnerable to my own failed actions sometimes. If I do something not right, I don't know if I say not right or something foolish, I do pay for it sometimes. And so, not sometimes, I always pay for my actions or so. But that's one of the things I really appreciate my I guess I call them business partners, but they're actually my employees, because they can oftentimes see things that I don't see. Like for instance, I rarely get involved in hiring process for our employees, primarily because, like I said before, I'm very much I believe in people too much. I'm a little bit too gullible that way, but I recognize that I am gullible, and therefore I don't want to be vulnerable, and I delegate that to individuals who are who are better at it than I am. I feel myself very very fortunate to have those around me who are okay with doing things that their bosses have figured that they can't do. So, but anyway, that's what a team actually works, is where people are good at one thing and not at the other, and vice versa. So, but anyway, that's but seeing where you're vulnerable is very very important. Which reminds me, there's a few operators I've had probably in the last about 4 or 5 months that have come through, and they were looking to expand into, I think, 3 or 4 trucks or something like that. And I was very as blunt as possible, without telling them not to do it. They were very, very nice people, and actually, to some degree, I felt they were too nice, a little bit like me, maybe, and maybe I'm gullible and not nice. I don't know, whatever. But I cautioned them that just because you're really, really good at being an independent operator, that does not necessarily mean you're really, really good at being a boss. It's a talent that you need to develop, where you have the ability to fire people, hire people, the right people, and just because you're a good operator and you're successful with one truck does not, under any circumstance, mean that you're good operating at 2 trucks or 3 or 5 or anything like that. You have to really be honest about your own personal abilities and the like. And in this article, I was talking about trusting your accountant, and delegating. If you want to be a business owner, especially starting out, you really don't have the luxury to delegate too much. You have to understand the basics. Have to understand whether the guy you're going to hire is going to be a good guy or not, because you don't have a whole lot of margin for error in the trucking industry, and it's tough to grow in an industry unless you have like family or cousins or something like that where you can bring them in as drivers. It's really not, if you're competing with carriers, it's very difficult sometimes to hire very good drivers, but it can be done, but just take that into consideration. 9 out of 10 guys who go to multiple trucks from a single truck, they fail. So it's only 10% that has success. But anyway, that was my article about pride and humility. I probably was going through something at the time when I wrote the article, and it came across that way. But the independent operator industry, I love the industry. It's a great industry. It's a little bit like herding cats sometimes, because everybody, the major point in independent operator is the word independent. Everybody thinks independent and stuff like that. So, but I'm a huge believer in independent minds and thinking and entrepreneurial spirit. So I appreciate the operators for sure that are out there. Okay, well, that's pretty much it for this little rant I got. And other than that, have a great trip.
Thanks for stopping by Making Your Miles Count. For further Making Your Miles Count productions, call us at 877-987-9787 or download us at makingyourmilescount.com.